Lynch Law and Unrestricted Immigration by the Honorable Henry Cabot Lodge, Representative in Congress from Massachusetts. The North American Review, Volume 152, May 1891. On Sunday, March 15th, the people of the United States were startled and shocked by hearing that on the preceding day, a mob in New Orleans, led by men of good standing in the community, had broken into one of the prisons and with cool deliberation had killed 11 Italians who were confined there. The victims of this attack were accused in complicity in the recent murder of the chief of police. 2 had never been brought to trial, and the trial of the others had resulted in the acquittal of 6 and a mistrial as to 3. The mob acted on the belief that these men were guilty of the crime with which they were charged, that crime was the work of a secret society known as the Mafia, and that the failure of the jury to convict was due either to terror of this secret organization or to bribery by its agents. Americans are a law-abiding people, and an act of lawlessness like the lynching of these Italians is sure to meet with their utmost disapproval. There is no doubt that every intelligent man deplores the lawless act of the New Orleans mob. But to stop there would be the reverse of intelligent. To visit on the heads of the mob all our reprobation, and to find in its act alone matter of anxiety and regret, would not only be unjust, but would show a very slight apprehension of the gravity and meaning of this event. Such acts as the killing of these 11 Italians do not spring from nothing without reason or provocation. The mob would have been impossible if there had not been a large body of public opinion behind it, and if it had not been recognized that it was not mere riot, but rather that revenge which Lord Bacon says is a kind of wild justice. The mob was deplorable, but the public sentiment which created it was more deplorable still, and deserves to have the reasons for its existence gravely and carefully considered. What, then, are the true causes of the events of the 14th of March at New Orleans? One, certainly, was the general belief that there had been a gross miscarriage of justice in the trial of the accused Italians. Whether the jury rendered their verdict against the evidence or not, it is certain that the people of New Orleans pretty generally thought that they had done so. It is, unfortunately, only too evident that there is a profound lack of confidence in the juries of New Orleans. Lawlessness and lynching are evil things, but a popular belief that juries cannot be trusted is even worse, for it is an indication that the law is breaking down in its ordinary operations. This condition of public opinion is, no doubt, due in very large measure to the extremely bad condition of politics in New Orleans, a fact of which the country has had for some time a vague idea, but upon which, since the 14th of March, it has received a great deal of very definite information. A city in which political meetings concerned only with the affairs of a single party are held under the conditions which attended the caucuses at the time of the struggle between Governors Nichols and McHenry, and where a great gambling enterprise has been sowing the seeds of corruption in every direction, is in a very bad way. Violence breeds violence, and corruption engenders corruption. Wrongdoing of this sort always returns to plague the inventors. At the same time, the condition of municipal politics in New Orleans is something that the people of that city must deal with themselves. If they do not set matters right in this respect, no one else can, and they will suffer by their bad city politics more than anybody else. The other exciting cause of the mob was the belief that the men who were killed were members of the Mafia, a secret society bound by the most rigid oaths and using murder as a means of maintaining its discipline and carrying out its decrees. Of the existence of such a society, no reasonable man can, I think, have any doubt. That it has, as a rule, confined its operation to the people who brought it here is, I think, equally beyond question, but there is nothing to keep it necessarily within such bounds. It is anything but self-limited, and in a political soil like that of New Orleans, it was pretty sure to extend. Now, if there is one thing more hateful to Americans than another, it is secret, oath-bound societies which employ assassination as a recognized means for carrying out their objects. The killing of the 11 prisoners had in it no race feeling whatever. There has been no hostility to the Italians in America as such. On the contrary, they have been generally regarded hitherto as an industrious people, prone to fierce quarrels among themselves, but, in the main, thrifty, hard-working, and well-behaved. The men were not killed in the New Orleans prison because they were Italians, but because they were believed to be members of a secret assassination society responsible for a brutal murder. There was a further popular belief that this society was not only responsible for the murder of the chief of police, but that it was extending its operations, that it was controlling juries by terror, and that it would gradually bring the government of the city and the state under its control. This belief, no doubt, was exaggerated, but it was certainly not without foundation. We have therefore three facts here of the gravest import. First, an outbreak of lawlessness which resulted in the death of 11 men. Second, a belief that juries could not be depended upon to administer justice and protect the lives of the citizens. Third, the existence of a secret society which was ready to use both money and murder to accomplish its objects, even to the point of perverting the administration of the law. It is my purpose to deal only with the last phase of this question. I believe that, whatever the proximate causes of the shocking event at New Orleans may have been, the underlying cause, and the one with which alone the people of the United States can deal, is to be found in the utter carelessness with which we treat immigration to this country. The killing of the prisoners at New Orleans was due chiefly to the fact that they were supposed to be members of the Mafia, but it would be a great mistake to suppose that the Mafia stands alone. Societies or political organizations which regard assassination as legitimate have been the product of repressive government on the continent of Europe. They are the offspring of conditions and of ideas wholly alien to the people of the United States. Nevertheless, to certain minds they present a permanent attraction, and there are classes of men sufficiently illiterate and sufficiently criminal to reproduce them wherever they may happen to be, even when there is no repressive government to serve as an excuse. The last 20 years have shown the existence of these societies at various times in one form or another in the United States. They have appeared in different parts of the country, and have usually been put down and their deeds punished by ordinary process of law. We have had, for example, the Molly Maguires in Pennsylvania, the anarchists in Chicago, the Mafia in New Orleans, and according to a recent statement in the New York Times, there is a similar organization among some of the Poles. Footnote: a dispatch to the New York Times, dated Shenandoah, February 10th, and headed Secret Polish Avengers, says, "It is now well known that a secret Polish society, organized for the purpose of defending their people and avenging their wrongs, has existed in this valley for the past 2 years. The police officers in this place have made the discovery, which in details is as sensational as anything connected with the Molly Maguire troubles." Then follows an account of the disturbance in a Polish saloon in which one Balsakowicz was beaten and robbed by John Anskaitis. After the arrest of the latter, 7 of his friends started out to avenge him and made a murderous assault upon a party of Balsakowicz's friends, but were attacked by the police and arrested. The society to which these men belong consists of about 40 members. They have no place of meeting but congregate in gangs on the street corners and in saloons. If one of the members gets into trouble, whether he is right or wrong, the society is obliged to stand by him and get him out of it at any cost. The police state that one of the most important objects of the society is subordination of perjury, and the rules of the society appear to have been most boldly enforced of late. End of footnote. It is idle to say that, like all other honest citizens, the great mass of men belonging to the races which have been most pointedly connected with these organizations heartily disapprove them. There is no question that this is true, and yet nonetheless these dangerous societies spring up and commit murders, and are either put down by the law or crushed out by wild deeds of lawlessness and bloodshed, like that at New Orleans. They come not from race peculiarities, but from the quality of certain classes of immigrants of all races. If we permit the classes which furnish material for these societies to come freely to this country, we shall have these outrages to deal with, and such scenes as that of 14th of March will be repeated. In the January number of this review, I brought together some statistics in regard to immigration and the changes in its character, as shown by the official reports of the last few years. Since the appearance of that article, a special report by Mr. F. L. Dingley upon the subject of European immigration has been issued by the State Department, and some of the statements which he makes are well worth consideration. They have a special weight because Mr. Dingley takes a very rosy view of the immigration to this country and is decidedly friendly to it, although he is not blind to its evils and advises that precautions should be taken to sift and direct it. In the previous article, to which I have just referred, I made the point that the immigration of those races which had thus far built up the United States, and which are related to each other either by blood or language, or both, was declining, while the immigration of races totally alien to them was increasing. Mr. Dingley's very recent facts strengthen this conclusion, and I desire to call attention to some of the evidence this report furnishes. The French, Belgian, and Dutch immigration, all of which has proved valuable to this country, is, as it has always been, so small as to be of comparatively slight importance. The German immigration, which has been not only one of the largest, but one of the best, has continued to decline. In the first 5 months of 1890, it fell off 6,000 as compared with the corresponding months of 1889. Of the Scandinavian immigration, Mr. Dingley says, the immigration from Sweden to the United States, for several years averaging from 40 to 50,000 annually, but it is now slowly receding. From Great Britain and Ireland, the figures are even more suggestive. For the 8 months of 1890 ending August 31st, as compared with the corresponding months of 1889, there was a decline of 7,426 in the total number of English immigrants to the United States. In Scotch immigrants, a decline of 3,348, and a decline of 6,321 in Irish immigration. The total decline of immigrants of British origin in this period, as compared with the corresponding period of 1889, was 17,195. The total for this period of 8 months in 1890 was 106,123. On the other hand, the immigration of Poles, Bohemians, Hungarians, Russians, and Italians is increasing. Here is a description which Mr. Dingley gives of some of them. Says one of the observers of the immigrant movement to the writer. There are 40 young fellows in that group yonder whom I saw returning from the United States last fall. They are now about returning together to the United States. I cannot prove that they are contract laborers, but I believe they are. They form an illustration of a good many immigrants. They have a leader. If the boarding house gets that leader, he gets the whole party. They follow him as the sheep follow their leader. These parties formerly went to Holland to make brick by contract. Now they do better by going to the United States. Do you see that woman who goes along with them with that huge pack on her back? She does the drudgery for the workmen, cooks for them, and carries their rags. Every group of 10 of these contract workers has an old woman to do their cooking. Who are they? They are generally Poles, generally young, generally ignorant. They are warranted work in the States at better wages than they used to get in Holland. They scrape together considerable money in the States and return to Poland each autumn to stay until they are again wanted in the ensuing spring in the United States. They travel from Poland to Bremen in fourth-class cars like cattle and live at livestock rates. They can get rich on low wages, live on pork and stale bread, and are killing competitors of unskilled American labor. Perhaps the most pitiable lot of the immigrant group which I am describing is a party of Russian Jews, starved out of Russia, going to the United States to join the congested ranks of middlemen. They are almost revolting, mainly peddlers of the smallest scale. Nobody wants them, even in the poorest immigrant lodging houses. The more one observes this movement, the more he is inclined to say that the place to stop it is not at Castle Garden, but in Russia. I learned that in England, students of this subject are now urging that the question be made a subject of diplomatic attention, for England is suffering from pauper immigration more notably, according to its population, than ourselves. A comparison of the personnel of the various national groups in Bremen immigrant lodging houses shows us at a glance the superiority of the Germans and Scandinavians. These Germans have an average of $50 in their pockets, besides their tickets to the American destination, some of them as far as Missouri and Dakota, but the Jews and Poles are practically penniless. Worse than all, perhaps, is the movement of low-class labor from the Far East. On this point, Mr. Dingley says, perhaps the most discouraging feature of the statistics from Marseille is the decided increase in the Oriental movement, Syrians and Armenians. The same increase holds true of Italy as of Hungary, Russia, and Poland. The total immigration from Naples to the United States in 1889 was 15,709. In the first 3 months of 1890, the total immigration was 10 times larger than for the corresponding period of 1889. From Naples, during the first 3 months of 1890, there immigrated to the United States 12,636 Italians and Sicilians. The movement from Sicily has been rapidly increasing during the past few years. From Palermo in 1887, 2,201 Sicilians embarked, destined for the United States. In 1888, the number advanced to 3,713, while in 1889 it moved up to 6,017, while during the present year the number is likely to be as great or larger. The American consul at Palermo, speaking of Sicilian immigrants, says, the Sicilian immigrants to the United States are generally rustic and of the lowest type of the Italian as to character and intelligence, few, if any, being able to read or write. They have not, as a rule, a cent of money after paying their fare. These are some of the figures, and Mr. Dingley further states that 85% of the Italian immigration is from Sicily and southern Italy. These facts, which I have quoted from Mr. Dingley's report, all show the truth of what I said in my previous article, that not only was our immigration changing in point of race, but that it was deteriorating. There is also another side to the Italian immigration pointed out by Mr. Dingley, which deserves a passing notice. This is the large number of Italians who stay but a short time in the United States and who then return to their native country with such money as they have been able to save here. I quote the report again. What amazes is the size of the counter-current. Sometimes as many as 1,000 Italians came back from the United States to Naples in the month of December. Hence, when they have made a few dollars in the United States beyond the present wants, they hasten to their old homes. They love to spend their savings in Italy. It seems to them almost a sacrilege to spend them elsewhere. This, of course, is a most unwholesome feature in any immigration. Persons who come to the United States reduce the rate of wages by ruinous competition and then take their savings out of the country are not desirable. They are mere birds of passage. They form an element in the population which regards as home a foreign country instead of that in which they live and earn money. They have no interest or stake in the country, and they never become American citizens. More serious, however, than these statements as to the general character of the present immigration are perhaps the startling facts which Mr. Dingley brings to light as to the utter failure of any laws or regulations which we now have to exclude members of the criminal classes. I will give a few extracts to show how serious this objection is. He says on this point in regard to Germany, whence comes so much of our best immigration, one sees some pardoned criminals. A lawyer who has sentenced to imprisonment for swindling was pardoned and sailed hence for the United States to start anew. Such persons are advised to leave their country for the joint good of the country and self. An American resident in Bremen states, I know of one case where two ex-convicts were assisted to leave Germany for the United States by a benevolent society. There are in every large German city societies to help ex-criminals to get a new start in the world. The United States consul at Bremen detected one case where two convicts had a new outfit and tickets for New York furnished by a benevolent society. These men were returned to Germany, but probably they have since gone to New York by some other line. They are birds of prey. You may see them in new suits and new outfits, handbag, etc., and generally they are tramps or ex-criminals who have been helped out of Europe, not by the government, but by so-called benevolent societies, whose object in part, I fear, is to get rid of undesirable population more than to bless all mankind. A German American in Hamburg speaks as follows. Many criminals and socialists have gone to the United States from Germany in recent years because they are not so thoroughly hounded there, while the American laws are less impertinent than the German. The same is true of the Scandinavian immigration, which has also been one of our best sources of immigration. Although such things are difficult to substantiate, still, from my own observation and circumstances, I have heard related and occasional incidental accounts in the press. I am thoroughly satisfied that criminals, vicious characters, paupers, and other objectionable persons have been and are constantly being assisted to America for the purpose of getting rid of them. And I doubt very much if there is a single hamlet, village, or any other community, not to speak of the large cities, in the whole kingdom which could not furnish instances of such a practice. I believe this is principally done by private subscription by members of the community to rid themselves of objectionable characters. But I also am perfectly confident that it is done as well by the officials of prisons, poorhouses, and other institutions, for the reason that, careful as the press is about publishing anything reflecting unfavorably upon their country or institutions, occasional instances, inadvertently or in other connections, appear in print. The worst showing is made at Liverpool, as might be expected from the very large number of immigrants leaving that port. Mr. Dingley quotes on this point the statement of an immigrant agent. I think that at least 100 very objectionable immigrants leave Liverpool every week for New York. Some of these, and perhaps the most objectionable, are British paupers, assisted by benevolent societies. Some of them are ex-convicts, and the most of them are paupers from the continent. I mean, persons without a cent of money, or an outlook, or trade, or habits of industry or of self-support. There is an agent in Liverpool who takes ex-convicts, sees them on the ship, and pays them their good behavior money after paying their passage to the United States. They are furnished with a new suit of clothes and are given to understand that they can do better abroad than at home. They have something over and above their tickets. The government is not connected in this matter, but they get to America on British funds. The Mormon immigration is declining, and yet Mr. Dingley found 120 on a single ship and was told by one of their missionaries that they brought over 700 a year. If these are the facts in regards to the best sources of immigration, we can imagine that they must be in regard to the worst. In the excitement growing out of the affair at New Orleans, one Italian newspaper said there were galley slaves at every point on the Atlantic coast, and there can be little doubt that there were ex-convicts among the New Orleans mafia. It would require more space than the review could give if I were to quote what is said in this report on the subject of disease among immigrants, but it has the same bearing as the statements in regard to the immigration of convicts and criminals. Ports in Europe where we used to have a consular medical examination are now entirely unguarded, and even at places where cholera has appeared, nothing is done by the United States to prevent the shipment of persons from infected districts. The increase of paupers is more alarming than that of criminals and diseased persons. Most of the Italians, Poles, and Hungarians have no money at all. They land in this country without a cent in their pockets. The condition of the Russian Jews, seen by Mr. Dingley, is even worse. Yet it has been stated in the newspapers that plans are on foot to remove these unfortunate people from Russia to the number of 4 millions and land them in the United States. I do not think that it is necessary for me to make any comment upon the extracts which I have quoted from Mr. Dingley's very interesting report. But if we reflect that on his own statement, 1/2 of the pauper population of Massachusetts and New York is of foreign birth, I think we can see how deeply alarming the present condition of affairs is. The last Congress passed an act to regulate immigration. It aims at nothing more than an attempt by better organization to enforce existing laws, which are not carried out now with any efficiency. It is well to have this done, of course, on the principle that something is better than nothing, but the act falls far short of what is needed. Here, in this report, we have the statement of an expert who has made a most careful investigation that the immigration of the races who have peopled the United States, and among whom the standard of education and character is comparatively high, is falling off, and that the immigration of people removed from us in race and blood is rapidly increasing, and that these people are almost wholly illiterate, and for the most part without resources, either in skill, training, or money. We also learn that many of them come here merely for a temporary purpose, and that by one channel or another, the paupers and criminals of Europe, covertly assisted in many instances by government or by benevolent societies, are pouring into the United States. It is not to be wondered at that from such elements secret societies, with assassination among their tenants, spring up, and that such bloody work as that of New Orleans, or the slaughter of the policeman in the Chicago Haymarket, ensues. Surely the time has come for an intelligent and effective restriction of immigration. No one wishes to exclude a desirable immigrant who seeks in good faith to become a citizen of the United States. But it certainly is madness to permit this stream to pour in without discrimination or selection, or the exclusion of dangerous and undesirable elements. There are great states in the West and Southwest naturally anxious to have their lands occupied and their population increased. But there is something more important than rapidity of settlement or the quick development of wealth. These advantages will be dearly bought if we pay for them a price which involves the lowering of the standard of American citizenship. More important to a country than wealth and population is the quality of its people. Far more valuable than sudden wealth is the maintenance of good wages among American workingmen and the exclusion of an unlimited supply of low-class labor with which they cannot compete. In the present state of things, not only are we doing nothing to protect the quality of our citizenship or the wages of our workingmen from an unrestricted flood of immigration, but we are permitting persons so ignorant and criminal to come among us that the organizations like the Mafia are sure to rise in our midst. The time has come for an intelligent restriction. Mr. Dingley advises, what every person who has looked carefully into the subject suggests, consular inspection in the country of departure. To this, I think, should be added some such fair and restrictive test as that of ability to read and write. What is needed now most of all, however, is an intelligent and active public opinion to which Congress will respond. If we do not act and act intelligently, we must be prepared for just such events as that at New Orleans, not merely bringing in their train murder and sudden death, but breeding race antagonisms and national hostilities which never existed before and which need never have an existence if we deal properly with this momentous problem.